Hi, welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today is Monday, January 29th, 2018. Today I'm going to recap what went on in college basketball this weekend, make picks for tonight and tomorrow's important games, go over what went on in the NBA this past weekend, and make picks for tomorrow night's TNT doubleheader. I want to go over ESPN Joe Lunardi's bracketology for today that came out, and two major NBA injuries I want to touch on at the end of the podcast. College basketball, Friday night, one game of importance, of significant, and I got that pick correct on this podcast. Number 6, Michigan State defeated Wisconsin by a score of 76-61. Michigan State improves to 19-3. Wisconsin drops to 10-12. Miles Bridges of Michigan State put up 24. Ethan Happ of Wisconsin put up 23. Saturday's games, I went 24-6 in the picks. I'll go over how I did on each game as I go forward. NC State upset number 10 North Carolina by a score of 95-91 in overtime. NC State improves to 15-7, and Carolina drops to 16-6. I picked Carolina on the podcast. I was wrong. Alaric Freeman of NC State put up 29. Luke May of Carolina put up 31 in the loss. Number 14, Texas Tech defeated South Carolina by a score of 70-63. I picked Texas Tech on the podcast. They improved to 17-4. South Carolina drops to 13-8. Keenan Evans of Texas Tech put up 31, and Chris Silva of South Carolina put up 16. Number 20, Florida defeated Baylor by a score of 81-60. I had Florida on the podcast. Florida improves to 15-6. Baylor drops to 12-9. Chris Chiozza of Florida put up 20. Terry Motson of Baylor put up 14. Number 24, Rhode Island defeated Duquesne 61-58 at the buzzer. I had Rhode Island on the podcast. They improved to 17-3. Duquesne drops to 14-8. Stanford Robinson hit the buzzer beater for Rhode Island. E.C. Matthews of Rhode Island put up 20. Renee Castro Kennedy of Duquesne put up 16. In what was the biggest game of the weekend in terms of college basketball, number 2, Virginia defeated number 4, Duke by a score of 65-63. Virginia improves to 20-1. Duke drops to 18-3. I had Duke on the podcast. I was wrong. Kyle Guy of Virginia hit 2 big free throws with 6.1 seconds left to lift Virginia to the win. He had 17 points in total. And Marvin Bagley of Duke had 30 in defeat. Texas defeated Ole Miss by a score of 85-72. I had Texas on the podcast. They improved to 14-7. Ole Miss drops to 11-10. Mohamed Bamba of Texas put up 25. DeAndre Burnett of Ole Miss put up 21 in a loss. Kansas State defeated Georgia by a score of 56-51. I had Kansas State on the podcast. Kansas State improves to 16-5. Georgia drops to 12-8. Dean Wade of Kansas State put up 20. Yante Martin of Georgia put up 14 in a loss. Kansas State has a big game tonight against Kansas that I'm going to pick on this podcast in a couple minutes. Alabama upset number 12 Oklahoma by a score of 80-73. Alabama improves to 14-7. Oklahoma drops to 15-5. I picked Oklahoma on the podcast. I was wrong. Colin Sexton of Alabama put up 18 points, and Kadeem Lattin of Oklahoma put up 18 points as well. Trae Young was outplayed by Sexton in that game. Butler defeated St. John's by a score of 70-45 in a game that they absolutely had to have. Butler improves to 15-7. St. John's drops to 10-12. Keelan Martin of Butler put up 19. Tariq Owens of St. John's put up 13. That's 10 straight losses for St. John's now. Wow. And they definitely miss Marcus Levette, who's their best player. Florida State defeated Miami by a score of 103-94. I had Florida State on the podcast. I also had Butler. Florida State improves to 16-5. Miami drops to 15-5. Phil Kofor of FSU put up 21, and Lonnie Walker of Miami put up 23 in a loss. Penn State followed up with that buzzer beater win against Ohio State with the home win over Rutgers by a score of 60-53. Penn State improves to 15-8. Rutgers drops to 12-11. Tony Carr of Penn State put up 16. Isa Thiam of Rutgers put up 12 in the loss. Syracuse defeated Pitt by a score of 60-55 in a game that they had to have. Syracuse improves to 15-6. Pitt drops to 8-14. Borama Sidobi of Syracuse put up 18, and Jared Wilson Fromm of Pitt put up 18 as well. Tennessee defeated Iowa State on the road by a score of 68-45. Tennessee was 22 at the time in the rankings. They improved to 15-5. Iowa State drops to 11-9. Lamonte Turner of Tennessee put up 20. Donovan Jackson of Iowa State put up 13. I had Syracuse on the podcast. I had Tennessee as well. A team I did not have winning on the podcast was Vanderbilt, as they upset TCU by a score of 81-78. Bad loss for TCU. They dropped to 15-6. Vanderbilt improves to 8-13. Kenrich Williams of TCU put up 17 in defeat. Riley LaChance of Vanderbilt put up 24 in the win. So yeah, bad loss for TCU on that resume, and that might cost them a seed line potentially. Number 5, Kansas defeated Texas A&M by a score of 79-68. Kansas improves to 17-4. Texas A&M drops to 13-8. I had Kansas on the podcast. Sviatoslav Michaliuk of Kansas put up 24, and Tyler Davis of A&M put up 18. Arizona defeated Utah by a score of 74-73. That was a big win for the number 11th ranked team in the country, as they improved to 18-4, or the then 11th, then ranked 11, now in the top 10. Utah drops to 13-8. Dusan Ristic of Arizona put up 23. Cedric Bearfield of Utah put up 26 in defeat. Arkansas defeated Oklahoma State by a score of 66-65. 66-65. Arkansas improves to 15-6. Oklahoma State drops to 13-8. I had Arkansas on the podcast. I had Arizona as well. Darrell Macon of Arkansas put up 22. Lindy Waiters of Oklahoma State put up 73 in a loss. Number 19, Auburn defeated LSU by a score of 95-70. Auburn improves to 19-2. LSU drops to 12-8. Mustafa Haran of Auburn put up 21. Drop Reith of LSU put up 18 in a loss. I had Auburn on the podcast. Cincinnati defeated Memphis by a score of 62-48. The number 9th ranked team in the country improved to 19-2. Memphis drops to 13-8. I had Cincinnati on the podcast. Gary Clark put up 18 for the Bearcats. Jeremiah Martin for the Tigers put up 20. In what was the most impressive victory of the weekend in college basketball, Kentucky upset number 7 West Virginia by a score of 83-76. Kentucky improves to 16-5, and West Virginia drops to 16-5. Kevin Knox put up 34 in a win. Javon Carter put up 26 in a loss. Big win for Kentucky. Let's see if they turn this into a nice run in the conference, and maybe they improve a couple seed lines. Bad loss for West Virginia. They've had a couple blown leads on their home floor lately, most notably on Saturday to Kentucky and a few weeks ago against Kansas. We'll see how both teams go from there. I picked West Virginia on the podcast. I was wrong. Another pick that I got wrong was Virginia Tech Notre Dame. I had Notre Dame, but Virginia Tech ended up winning by a score of 80-75. Virginia Tech improves to 15-6. Notre Dame drops to 13-8. Justin Bibbs of Virginia Tech put up 20 points in a win. TJ Gibbs of Notre Dame put up 27 in a loss. Louisville defeated Wake Forest by a score of 96-77. I had Louisville on the podcast. They improve to 16-5. Wake drops to 8-13. VJ King of Louisville put up 16, and Shawnee Brown of Wake Forest put up 20. Nebraska defeated Iowa by a score of 98-84. I had Nebraska on the podcast. Nebraska improves to 16-8. Iowa drops to 11-12. James Palmer Jr. put up 28 in a win. Tyler Cook put up 24 in a loss. Number 15, Gonzaga defeated San Francisco by a score of 82-73. I had Gonzaga on the podcast. They improved to 19-4. San Francisco drops to 12-11. Killian Tilly of Gonzaga put up 16. Frankie Ferrari of San Francisco put up 15 in defeat. Oregon defeated Oregon State by a score of 66-57. I had Oregon on the podcast. That was a big win for the Ducks. They improved to 14-7. Oregon State drops to 11-9. Elijah Brown of Oregon put up 20. Stephen Thompson Jr. of Oregon State put up 16 in a loss. Arizona State defeated Colorado at home by a score of 80-66. Arizona State improves to 16-5. Number 21 in the country is Arizona State. We'll see what they are in the rankings this week. They lost a few times this week, and they really haven't looked like the team that they were a few months ago. Colorado State drops to 12-10. Trey Holder of Arizona State put up 22, and Dominique Collier of Colorado put up 11 in defeat. I had Arizona State on the podcast. I also had Creighton on the podcast. They defeated Georgetown in a game that they absolutely had to have by a score of 85-77. Creighton improves to 17-5. Georgetown drops to 13-8. Marcus Foster of Creighton put up 28. Javon Blair of Georgetown put up 21. I had Mississippi State on the podcast. They defeated Missouri by a score of 74-62. Mississippi State improves to 15-6. Mizzou drops to 13-8. Quindery Weatherspoon of Mississippi State put up 20. Carius Robertson of Mizzou put up 20 in a loss. I had UCLA on the podcast. They defeated Stanford by a score of 89-73. UCLA improves to 15-7. Stanford drops to 11-11. Aaron Holiday had 21. Dejon Davis of Stanford had 23 in a loss. Number 16, St. Mary's defeated Portland by a score of 72-55. St. Mary's improves to 21-2. Portland drops to 8-15. Jordan Ford of St. Mary's put up 20. JoJo Walker of Portland put up 15 in a loss. Sunday's games. I had St. Mary's on the podcast if I did not mention it. I actually went 9-0 in the college picks for Sunday in terms of my podcast picks. So that's a hearty congratulations to me for the first time ever going undefeated in a single day's worth of college picks. So yeah, 9-0 for me. Number 6, Michigan State defeated Maryland on the road by a score of 74-68. Michigan State improves to 23. Maryland drops to 15-8. Joshua Langford put up 19 for the Spartans. Kevin Huter of Maryland put up 17 in a loss. Villanova defeated Marquette by a score of 85-82. The best team in the country improves to 20-1. Marquette drops to 13-8. I have to give Marquette credit. They gave the best team in the country a game, and they could have won that game. They had leads throughout the game, and I think Marquette should be a tournament team, even though they lost that game. I had to give Marquette a ton of credit. Jalen Brunson put up 31 in a win for Villanova. Andrew Rousey in a loss of put up 29 for Marquette. And that was a very fun and entertaining game. Houston defeated South Florida by a score of 63-40. Houston improves to 16-4. USF drops to 8-14. Corey Davis put up 17 for Houston. Stephon Jiggets of South Florida put up 10. Number 3, Purdue defeated Indiana by a score of 74-67. Purdue wins its 17th straight game, improves to 21-2. Indiana drops to 12-10. Isaac Hass of Purdue put up 26. Juwan Morgan of Indiana put up 24 in a loss. I have to give Archie Miller's team some credit. They hung around with Purdue, had the lead at halftime. I said it on this podcast that it was a trap game for Purdue, although I did pick Purdue. but I did say it'd be close. USC defeated Cal by a score of 77-59. USC improves to 17-6. Cal drops to 7-15. Marcus Lee of Cal put up 23 in defeat. Elijah Stewart of USC put up 16 in the win. Seton Hall defeated DePaul in a game that they absolutely had to have by a score of 86-70. Seton Hall improves to 16-5. DePaul drops to 9-12. Miles Powell of Seton Hall put up 21. Tredarius McCollum of DePaul put up 16 in a loss. Number 18, Clemson, defeated Georgia Tech by a score of 72-70. That was a trap game for them. Give them credit for avoiding the trap. They improved to 17-4. Georgia Tech drops to 10-11. Gabe DeVoe of Clemson put up 25, and Josh Okaji of Georgia Tech put up 26 in a loss. Number 17, Wichita State defeated Tulsa by a score of 90-71. Wichita State improves to 17-4. Tulsa drops to 11-10. Austin Reeves of Wichita State put up 23. Corey Henderson Jr. of Tulsa put up 28 in a loss. Washington defeated Washington State by a score of 80-62. Washington improves to 15-6. Washington State drops to 9-11. Matizi Thibault of Washington put up 18, and Robert Franks of Washington State put up 16. And those are my picks from Sunday. I'm going to pick Monday and Tuesday's important games now. Only 4 picks for Monday, or for today. You have number 4 Duke hosting Notre Dame. Give me Duke at home. Michigan is hosting Northwestern. I'll give me the 24th ranked team in the country to knock off Northwestern. Wisconsin hosts Nebraska. That game really isn't that relevant, but if Nebraska can get this win, it can make a interesting and at-large case, but give me Wisconsin at home. And last but not least, what's the biggest game of the night? Number 7, Kansas at Kansas State. Give me Kansas on the road, barely. I considered strongly picking Kansas State here, but I didn't have the guts to do it. So give me the Jayhawks on the road. A couple games to pick for Tuesday. Number 22, Rhode Island is at UMass. Give me Rhode Island on the road. Number 19, North Carolina is at number 20, Clemson. That's a big game. Give me Clemson at home. Number 17, Ohio State hosts Indiana. Give me Ohio State. Number 23, Florida is at Georgia. Give me Florida. TCU's at Oklahoma State. Give me Oklahoma State at home. Number 6, Xavier goes to St. John's. Give me Xavier on the road. Minnesota, Iowa. Not really a relevant game, but if Minnesota wins this one, that makes it a little bit interesting in that large discussion. So give me Minnesota on the road. Number 11, Auburn at Ole Miss. Give me Auburn on the road. Number 21, Kentucky hosts Vanderbilt. Give me Kentucky at home to follow up that big West Virginia win with a win over the SEC's worst team. Texas A&M hosts Arkansas. Give me Texas A&M. They absolutely need that game. And last but not least, number 12, Oklahoma hosts Baylor. Give me Oklahoma at home. I want to go over Joe Lunardi's bracket real quick before I move on to NBA. There's some interesting seedings in there. The number 1 seeds in the East, you have Villanova. In the West, you got Kansas. In the South, you have Virginia. And in the Midwest, you have Purdue. The East bracket, as I mentioned, Villanova is your 1 seed. The 16s right now, New Orleans of the Southland Conference and North Carolina A&T of the MEAC. 8 seed East, TCU. 9 seed in the East, Arkansas. 5 seed in the East, Florida. 12 seed in the East, Buffalo of the MAC. Number 4 in the East, North Carolina. Number 13 in the East, East Tennessee State. East Tennessee State's from the SoCon. Number 6 in the East is Seton Hall. Number 11 in the East is Houston. Number 3 in the East is Ohio State. Number 14 in the East is Bucknell. They're in the Patriot League. Number 7 in the East is Nevada. They're in the Mountain West. Number 10 in the East is Texas. Number 2 in the East is Auburn. I think that's too high for Auburn. And number 15 in the East is Penn of the Ivy League. West seed, I mentioned number 1 is Kansas. Number 16 is Winthrop. They're from the Big South. Number 8 in the West is Florida. Number 9 in the West is Florida State. Number 5 in the West is Wichita. Number 12 in the West is New Mexico State. They're from the WAC. Number 4 in the West, Tennessee. Number 13 in the West is South Dakota State of the Summit League. Number 6 in the West is Creighton. Number 11 in the West, a play-in between Syracuse and SMU. I don't think SMU belongs in the field right now. Syracuse, I believe, does, especially if they can pick off some big-time ACC teams at home. And I think they might. And especially if they can get like North Carolina, Clemson, Virginia, Duke. Like if they could pick 3 of those 4 teams off at home, I think they're in a very, very good spot to get into the tournament. I just have to double check their schedule and see if they get those 4 at home. Hopefully they do, because that would certainly make things interesting. And the tournament's always fun when Jim Boeheim's in there. Number 3 in the West is Arizona. Number 14 in the West is Montana. They're of the Big Sky Conference. Number 7 in the West, Rhode Island. Number 10 in the West, Kansas State. Number 2 in the West, Duke. Number 15 in the West, Rider of the MAC of 2As. The MAC of 1A is Buffalo. The MAC of 2As is Rider. South. As I mentioned, the number 1 seed, Virginia. 16 is Wagner. They're of the NEC. 8 in the South, Michigan. 9 in the South, Butler. 5 in the South, Kentucky. Number 12 in the South, a play-in. Boise State and NC State. NC State belongs. You can make a case about Boise State. I'm going to say, yeah, Boise State does belong. They're a good team in the Mountain West this year. They have some big wins on their resume. Number 4 in the South, West Virginia. Number 13 in the South, Vermont. They're of the AEC. Number 6 of the South is Louisville. Number 11 of the South is Middle Tennessee. They're of the Conference USA. Number 3 in the South is Cincinnati. Number 14 in the South is Northeastern. They are of the CAA. Number 7 of the South is Gonzaga. Number 10 in the South is Marquette. Number 2 in the South is Michigan State. Number 15 of the South is Wright State. They're of the Horizon League. The Midwest, as I mentioned, your 1 seed's Purdue. Your 16 seed is the play-in Long Beach State of the Big West. And Arkansas is Pine Buff of the SWAC. Number 8 in the Midwest, Arizona State. Number 9 of the Midwest, Alabama. Number 5 of the Midwest, Texas Tech. Number 12 of the Midwest is Loyola Chicago. They're of the Mountain Valley Conference. Number 4 of the Midwest, Clemson. Number 13 in the Midwest is Louisiana Lafayette. They're of the Sun Belt. Number 6 in the West is Miami. Number 11 in the Midwest is Texas A&M. Number 3 in the Midwest, Oklahoma. Number 14 in the Midwest is Belmont. They are of the OVC. Number 7 in the Midwest is St. Mary's. Number 10 in the Midwest, USC. Number 2 in the Midwest, Xavier. Number 15 in the Midwest is Florida Gulf Coast. They're in the Atlantic Sun. All right, NBA. I want to do this quickly. Just want to get this out of the way really quick. 3 games from the weekend that were on national television. 3-0 for NBA picks, 3 games. The Pelicans defeated the Rockets by a score of 115-113. New Orleans improved to 27-21. Houston drops to 34-13. The big story of this game is that DeMarcus Cousins had a triple-double, 15 points, 13 rebounds, 11 assists, and then he injured his left Achilles and is now out for the season. I'll get to that injury more in a couple minutes. Chris Paul of the Rockets put up 38. Anthony Davis put up 27 for the Pelicans to help them to a win. Saturday primetime in a fun game, the Warriors defeated the Celtics by a score of 109-105. Very well be a finals preview. Golden State improves to 40-10. Boston drops to 35-15. Stephen Curry put up 49 for the Warriors in his best game of the season. And Kyrie Irving put up 37 for Boston in a loss. Nationally televised game last night on ESPN. The Thunder defeated the Sixers by a score of 122-112. Oklahoma City wins their 8th straight, improves to 30-20. Philadelphia drops to 24-22. Russell Westbrook put up 37 in the win. Joel Embiid put up 27 in the loss. Picks for tomorrow night's TNT doubleheader. The Pistons host the Cavs. Give me the Cavs on the road. And the Clippers host the Trailblazers. Give me the Clippers at home. Two big NBA injuries I want to touch on real quick. Andre Roberson of the Thunder, out for the season. That's a big loss for the Thunder. Now, to me, it's not as big as the injury I'm going to mention next. To me, Oklahoma City just has to improve their two-guard position. Maybe they can go out and get an Evan Fournier of Orlando, or Courtney Lee of the Knicks, Karis LeVert of the Nets, just to throw out a couple names. And then, obviously, Boogie Cousins' injury is devastating. I don't think the Pelicans recover from this. I think they fall out of the playoff picture of the West. I think Anthony Davis has to turn into Superman if the Pelicans want to make the playoffs, because their wings are bad. Drew Holiday's a nice point guard, and Rondo's been nice for them as like a backup, but their wings are terrible, and I really think that, barring a trade, I don't think New Orleans makes the playoffs. So I think Boogie's injury is way more devastating than Roberson's, because I think Oklahoma City can make a trade for a rental or something at the trade deadline. All right, I'll be back sometime later this week with an NBA trade deadline preview. I'll be back Wednesday with a podcast recapping picks from college basketball for tonight and tomorrow's games, and same with the NBA. And I'll talk about what else is necessary. I hope you guys have a nice